Well, I finally know how it feels to be one of the 5 Camila Cabello fans out there.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We have a lot to discuss today. A lot, actually, and a lot of it I'm very upset that we have to talk about, but here we are. So obviously we all know that Women's World by Katy Perry is officially out now, and this was supposed to be her big comeback into pop music. But to say that it didn't go well is kind of an understatement. We're going to be going over most of the controversies that people have for this song, this music video, this entire era at this point, basically, and how disappointing it is as a fan who grew up with Katy Perry. I mean, like, she is one of my favorite, if not my favorite artist of all time. And to see where her career is at right now is just truly unfortunate. I want to start out by saying that this era could have easily been extremely successful for Katy to come back and, take the spotlight again because throughout the entirety of the summer, so many of her earlier hits like Teenage Dream, Last Friday Night have been going viral on TikTok, and a lot of people were starting to acknowledge how amazing Katy Perry was as an artist because I feel like she never really got her true flowers for that Teenage Dream era alone. Like I can go over her entire career, but Teenage Dream as a pop era, it's just so iconic. So many artists continue to say that it's just an era that they wish they could achieve because no other artist has still yet to achieve their Teenage Dream. I mean, Teenage Dream was the second album after Michael Jackson's to have 5 number 1s off of one album, 6 if Billboard didn't change the rules. Like everything about that era was iconic, and to see this new era kind of start the way it did is just truly unfortunate. Like so much of the general public was ready for Katy to come back. It was primed to be her successful comeback, and we're in this era of pop music being fun again. We're seeing Chapel Roan, Tyla, Serena Carpenter, Renee Rapp, Tate McRae, all of these artists who are just pure fun in their work coming to the spotlight, and this would have been the perfect time for Katy to come back because that is the music that she was known for in the early 2010s and the mid 2010s. And like this was the perfect time for her to come back, and to see her team and her fumble this is just insane in so many levels. We got to start off by talking about the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room in this case is Dr. Puke. I'm not gonna fucking say his name, but you know who the fuck it is because most of the conversations about this era so far have been about him. So I do think a lot of the hatred for this era stems from the whole Dr. Puke and Kesha trial. At least as a music fan and from a music fan's perspective, they're not willing to give an era a chance knowing who's behind that era, you know? Like, the general public's not really going to look into it, and that's why I think some of that is not playing into the hate. Well, unless the general public finds out, which in this case they did because the backlash got so strong and they're kind of aware of that situation now. But I do think the fact that you have this person who's had experiences with your former friend, and so many women have come out against him, and you're making him the producer of a song called Woman's World it's just genuinely weird shit. And unfortunately for her, I believe he's involved with all, if not most, of the songs on this new album of hers. With how Katy was trying to market this as her big comeback, I do think she went back to Dr. Luke to reignite the era that was Teenage Dreams. It's just not possible. And I already know the Katy Cats are going to come into the comment section being like, well, she has to. She's in a contract with him. There's nothing we can do about it. That's been proven false so many times, guys. Like, stop running with the lies. Like, and some people are also going to claim that, oh, like, he was found not guilty by the court, so there's not enough evidence to determine that Kesha was telling the truth, which is, like, insane. Like, first of all, what the fuck? Second of all, it wasn't a criminal case. Kesha didn't take Dr. Lute to court. She just simply requested to get out of her contract with him. And in return, he sued her for defamation. That's what happened. No one was found not guilty or whatever. So like nothing was ever like said about this. You know, he was never criminally charged for it. And I don't know if that's like not sticking to a lot of y'all's heads or you're choosing to ignore that. That being said, I know the Dr. Puke situation is definitely a huge setback for this era, but I definitely don't think it's like the biggest reason why this era is being hated upon. I do think that most of the general public doesn't really look into this shit. Like, they're not looking at who's producing and who's writing this shit unless it's like a very famous producer like Metro Boomin, who usually does have their name in the credits. Like, their credit is like, oh, The Weeknd featuring Metro Boomin. You know what I'm talking about? But like Dr. Luke has always been kind of like a background character in the Katy Perry lore and like the Kesha lore and shit like that. So like I don't think the general public's really looking out for that. I think most of them are finding out about the situation from all the Katy haters and all the Stan Twitter people who are talking about it after people were hating on the song. So that's just adding fuel to the fire. I do think there are bigger reasons why this song in this era is already being hated upon. And the fact of the matter is, Woman's World was a terrible lead single choice. And I definitely think this is the biggest reason why this era is off to a terrible start, because this is something not only the general music fan and Katy haters can agree on because the song is just not good to them, but also the general public who listen to it who thinks it's just genuine crap. Woman's World feels like a song that you create as a joke with your producers and writers when you're really bored, and it's not like something you actually plan on putting on the album. The lyrics are corny as hell, like sexy, confident, so intelligent. Like a freaking kindergartner can write that. Like, granted, no one's going to Katy Perry for like lyrical masterpieces. We're going for the bops. Like, this is the same lady who wrote Hot and Cold, which is the most unserious song on earth. I feel like the only difference between the two is that there was charm in Hot and Cold in the Teenage Dream era and the Prism era. It's a fun time listening to the songs. You can obviously tell Katy had a fun time recording those songs. Woman's World just doesn't have the same charm as those songs. Like, besides the chorus, it genuinely feels like Katy's really bored singing the song. Woman's World feels like a corporate girl boss anthem in the style of like a Meghan Trainor song. You can argue that Katy Perry has always been corporate pop, but I feel like a big reason why a lot of people never really lumped her in with the rest of the corporate pop artists is because she actually had some charm to her. She had the wacky nature of her personality. She had the striking visuals. Everything about Katy Perry was so unique compared to a lot of her peers. You can tell she tried recreating this with Women's World, and I'll give her this. I think the music video is very iconic, typical Katy Perry. Like, it's wacky, cartoonish, but it feels more forced rather than having soul, if that makes sense. Typical criticism that a lot of music fans, specifically pop music fans, had for Katy Perry is she never evolved her sound. It very much felt like she was sticking to her one particular niche of that wacky pop music that has the charm to it, but like it's not like evolving. And like as her audience grew older, they cared less about that personality of hers. Obviously now they're missing it, and unfortunately for them, they're getting the wackiness in all the wrong ways. Women's World genuinely felt like a step back for her, and a lot of the people who criticized her for this lack of growth are not going to be tuned in for the rest of the album because they heard Women's World and are probably thinking, wow, this is trash. The rest of the album's going to sound like this. When in reality, if you hear a lot of the other snippets that Katy has released or teased, they're actually not that bad. In fact, they're experimenting with the dance pop genre, which this album is primarily about. And she dabbles pretty well with dance pop. I think there's one song in particular that she like teased in the Zane Lowe interview. I forgot what it was called. I'll be sure to add it in the end of the video if I find out. But that one song I think is very different from anything she's ever really released before. I think that should have been the lead single, but like Women's World just feels like a step back because it feels like you're taking everything people did like about you, but then making it significantly worse. This is exactly why songs like Harley's in Hawaii and Walking on Air are some of her most important songs to date. With songs like those, she's actually experimenting with a different sound, a different genre, and it actually worked extremely well. So whatever she does, branch out and do something different, it's actually good. These songs are not only important because they're so different, but because they're still considered some of her best songs, not only by myself, but by critics and by fans and music enjoyers. What's really interesting about Harley's in Hawaii in particular is a lot of the people who end up enjoying the song are actually shocked that it's Katy Perry. Like, they didn't even know it was her. This is something that Katy Perry never gets. Like, no one really stops and says, wow, Katy Perry has done something unique and different. Well, if you follow my TikTok, you know that one of the things that I talk about a lot in regards to Katy Perry is that whenever she did ever plan on coming back, she needs to do something very different, something no one's really ever seen from her ever. And I've suggested R&B before in the style of Harley's in Hawaii. I think an entire album of R&B like songs like Harley's in Hawaii would be perfect, and I think it'd be very different, and a lot of people would be intrigued by that. And like Katy definitely has the voice suitable for R&B as we've seen before. Or I've also thought about dance pop, and that's exactly what she's doing, albeit in a very poor way. But there's so many genres out there that she can experiment with, but like the fact that she's sticking to that safe formula is just truly unfortunate. Like, I think she can do so much better as an artist. Even with the snippets that we got for this 143 record, which is mostly dance pop, it just feels fairly safe still. Like, I think is just typical dance pop, and I guess that's what you expect. And I'm glad that she is trying out a new genre. She did say she wants to do dance pop and an acoustic album. I'm glad that she's trying to do something different now. But I think Woman's World is an example of her still wanting to be safe, making Woman's World the lead single because she knows that it's likely going to be the guaranteed hit. I don't think she expected that in this current landscape though, because I think she still thinks that pop friendly, radio friendly music is gonna sell. But like Woman's World is an example of the type of music that Gen Z and most audiences nowadays are just not clamoring for anymore because they know when a corporation is speaking to them rather than the person. The last reason why Woman's World wasn't received that well is because of the feminist angle to it. And this is something I'm gonna briefly go over because, well, obviously I'm not the person to talk about women's rights and feminism, but I do want to talk about something that's really been bothering a lot of women who listen to the song or watch the music video. Women have shared on social media some of the reasons why they don't feel empowered by the song. The first one is pretty self explanatory, but it just feels like corporate feminism meshed into a song. Like it just doesn't feel genuine, like it comes from a place of actual female togetherness. Katy is like one of the queens of empowerment. A lot of her music is about uplifting other people, and she's done it so much better with songs like Roar, which does have that element of corporateness to it, but like done so much better because it comes from a personal experience of hers. Another reason given is the music video very much feels like a boy's fantasy video. I obviously cannot share the video. There were so much going on in that music video, so much titties. In a way, it's pretty cool to see her very confident in her body. She looks amazing. And there definitely is room to show the sexy side of women. But every sexy aspect of the music video feels very much like it's from a man's perspective rather than how a woman feels sexy. Katy has since released a video kind of explaining her vision for the video and the song, and I can get where she's coming from. And you guys can claim that I have like no media literacy skills when I say this, but I just don't think her video does a good job of executing that vision that well. The fact that she had to make a video tells us a lot of things. Like, first of all, she was definitely expecting the backlash. Like, there's no way you recorded this like without any real intent because if you had a clear vision, you'd think your video would explain that well. You know what I mean? Personally, a better video for Women's World would have been just simply showing women doing these amazing jobs like construction and being a teacher, being a stay at home mom, being a doctor, uh, being a lifeguard, whatever. No, again, I'm not writing this era off as a total flop yet. It's looking kind of bleak though, but I do think there's two possible scenarios that can come out of this Woman's World fiasco. The first path that I could see her taking, which would be really unfortunate, would be the Sam Smith path. Sam Smith tried promoting the Unholy era as this new sound for them, as this new brand for them, and they tried passing it off as this unique new idea when one, most of the imagery used in this era is so overused, and two, Unholy is a pretty basic fucking song, even though it's not terrible, it's pretty basic. However, in an effort to change your brand, your sound, you end up losing the original audience that you carved out because you're giving them this music that they're not really caring for. I want to be more specific, generic music. Smith's transition to more generalized pop music led to them losing a lot of fans despite being one of the most beloved artists of our generation at one point. Now they're one of the most memed artists and the most hated on artists of our generation. People are already starting to call Katy Perry a cringe person. They're like going at her, they're making fun of her. Like it definitely feels like Katy Perry slowly entering that space. And unfortunately for her, she does not have a number one hit like Unholy to at least somewhat back her up. So the second path is the Doja Cat path. So the general public is going to call you cringe. They're going to think you're a horrible human being for a variety of reasons. But then you release your second single, your Paint the Town Red, if you'll say, and it ends up doing extremely well. I don't know if Katie's going to get the number one hit, but like it's going to do extremely well. And people are actually praising your work instead of hating on you, but also still criticizing your personal life. And I could definitely see her go down this path, especially because she has a 21 Savage collaboration on her album. And if you add 21 Savage to one of your tracks, you're almost guaranteed a top 20 spot because he's so popular at the moment. So maybe if she releases that as the next single, hopefully her team's smart enough to do that, she may have that one hit at least for the era, and maybe she'll have her own Agora Hills in the future by herself. Other than that, I really don't have much else to add that other people didn't already say. I just think that this era is off to a really bad start, and I just wanted to examine it a little bit and see where the issues are and maybe where she can fix these issues. I know her team genuinely always puts her into these shitty situations. So maybe look into a new team or some shit, girl. But for now, my advice to you now is just, carefully select your singles. Maybe at least do that for now. Dr. Puke aside, try doing that. Like genuinely, I cannot fathom the fact that you chose Woman's World as your lead single. Like it is not a lead single worthy song. But anyways, it's over to you guys now. What do you think of Woman's World? What do you think of Katy's new era? Do you think it has potential to be saved, or do you think it's going to be a complete flop? I would love to know your opinions, and as always, keep it civil in the comments.